Hello everybody, welcome back once again to the Lord of the Rings The Third Age playthrough. I've got all kinds of just weird stuff going on with this video, so bear with me, but mostly it's going to be kind of like the stuff I guess I kind of do here in, where are we? Helm's Deep, yes. And then obviously right away here we've got all kinds of new equipment to equip. The previous video was fighting with Legolas and Gimli and doing all of those battles, and then obviously right now we've just got to the save point, and we're kind of in between fights, I suppose you could say, or right in the middle of all the action. Let's see here. Looks like I'm not going to equip whatever weapon that was. This is kind of garbage too. Again, you know, if you're building a melee-oriented Aedan, then go right ahead. You know, equip that Uruk-hai pike. That's a really good. It's got a good amount of damage on it. I didn't like the negatives to the stats, and again, I don't really do melee with him, so I don't even bother equipping it. Anyways. Alright, got a pair of new Vam braces for Elagast. And it looks like that's it. Alright, so we're good on new gear here. I do want to point out though there is a couple of interesting things here with Helm's Deep. For one thing, and it'll be coming up here actually, but there's a couple of orbs on the ground that if you pick them up and then go save your game and then quit out to the title screen and then come back in and reload your game, those orbs will be back. And you know, that it's kind of cool. There's kind of I suppose one really good elf stone that you can get then, you know, multiples of, which you wouldn't normally be able to get. So you know, I'll actually have some footage of me actually doing that, so I'll, you know, point that out once I actually get to said footage. But I also wanted to add that here is pretty much the spot where I do a ton of my skilling up, as well as, you know, I don't know that I would say I sit here for a really long time to level. That just kind of ends up happening. But alright, anyways, these orbs up here are the orbs I'm talking about. So the first time, this orb here is armor for Morrowind, this is armor for Idriel, and then that is the polished elfstone of armor enhancement, and then the Entwife Pullen. The cracked elfstone of armor enhancement is the one that will respawn. All four orbs actually respawn, but the two that I just grabbed there first, the armor for Morrowind and the whatever it was for Idriel, those will not, like, you can interact with them, but you don't get anything because you really don't get duplicate equipment in this game. And by that I mean anything other than a polished, anything other than an elfstone. Elfstones you can get, you know, as many as you want. But the actual equipment for specific characters does not duplicate. So again, those two orbs will be empty if you save your game and then, you know, quit out to the title screen and then come back. So again, if you want multiple elfstones of or polished elfstones of armor enhancement, you can do that. You can, like I said, you can get as many as you want. You'll really only ever want 6 because you can't equip multiple elfstones of the same name on the same character. So again, get to 6, or I mean, I know there was one that we got earlier. I believe we got one in East Emnet Gullies, and there may even be one later on, but I would just get to 6 right now, and you know, and then continue on. I guess focus on something else. Other than that, all right. So there's 2 areas here where you can get into random fights. There's this I call it the top area. That's this area right here. And then there's kind of a bottom area, and I'll show you where there's a kind of a line that separates the two, and that's important for the next point I want to talk about, and that's that there is a certain enemy formation in this area, and it's very unique in that you will get a cracked elfstone of fire protection when you win. Now, the reason why that's so interesting is because you can keep, as long as you keep, I guess, running into that specific enemy formation, you will keep getting more cracked elfstones of fire protection. Now, the cracked elfstone of fire protection isn't all that great. I believe it only adds like +1 to your strength, and then obviously gives you some fire protection. But I just found it more interesting that there was, you know, a random encounter that you get a piece of equipment from that happens one more time later on in the game. But here's the split. You notice the Palantir went away, and now here it's back. So again, this is the split between the top and the bottom. Now there's 2 more items here. You get a Dwarven Ale, and then there is I believe a cracked elfstone of action enhancement or something like that. This is the enemy formation I was talking about. So you can see there's a caster on the far left, and then a dude with the pike, and then what else? We got a dual wielding swordsman, and then the captain or whatever, the guy with the crossbow. And this is the enemy formation I was talking about, where we will get a cracked elfstone of fire enhancement at the end. So once we get to our rewards here, I will point that out. And there you have it. Cracked elfstone of fire protection. So again, there is only one, I believe, other random encounter in the game that I found. There you go, cracked elfstone of action enhancement. So if you want multiples of that, again, you can use this save trick, I suppose. So again, all of these white orbs in this little area here are, I guess, kind of like respawnable. So that's what I'm going to do here. Let's see if I... Okay, so I must have saved, so I guess I cut that out. But I saved, and then I reloaded, or I went all the way out to the main menu. Wow. And then I reloaded my game, just to show you guys that these white orbs respawn. So there you are. There's another Dwarven Ale, and this should be another. What was that? Cracked elfstone of action enhancement. Now this is not the random encounter that I was talking about. So when you get into this area here, there's multiple different enemy formations, and this one will not give you the cracked elfstone of fire enhancement. Again, the formation has to be the caster on the far left, and then the pikeman, and then the dual wielder, and then the guy with the crossbow on the far right hand side, I guess, as your characters are looking at them. I guess actually also from our perspective, so I guess I didn't really need to be specific there, but there you go. So that's just regular rewards there. So again, there is one other battle that I encountered like this in the game, and I almost suspect that it's a bug and they didn't really intend for that to happen. I feel like it was meant to be a fixed encounter, but you know it's not. So there you go. I grabbed those last 2 orbs there, and you don't get anything. And again, that's because you can't get duplicates of characters' equipment, again, other than elfstones. Elfstones you can get, again, as many as you want. But, up here in this top area, you will never run into that formation that gives you the cracked elfstone of fire enhancement, or fire protection, sorry. Fire enhancement, that would be cool. That would increase the damage on Hadhod's fire spells. That would be awesome if that was actually a thing. Kind of needs all the help he can get. Well, not really. Later on he gets pretty beastly. But anyways, So yeah, again, if you want to collect a couple of those items, go right ahead. I typically do a lot of leveling here, and you'll, I guess maybe, I don't know if you'll really notice a difference in my power from this point on. I feel like the major jump was back in East Emnet Gullies when, you know, a couple of my characters had learned Wheel of Fire. And that was fairly noticeable because it almost changes the way I play, just because, you know, you can start kind of just blowing everything to smithereens and not have to really worry about sleeping things as much and whatnot. But anyways, again, from here on, I feel like this is just a fantastic place to level. It's nice and compact. There's a save point right here. The random encounters happen extremely fast, so you don't have to move very far, you know, to build up a lot of the Palantir, I don't know, random encounter meter, I guess you could say. And yeah, so here we go. I'm just collecting more of these. Again, I think one of those polished elf stones of armor enhancement was way back in East Emnet Gullies. So yeah, here you can see I've got 3 new armor enhancements, and what was that, 2 of whatever that the other one was. Anyways, you know, again, you can get a ton of these if you want, but this is just a really great place to level. This is where I do most of my character's skill ups as well. And there's a couple of different, you know, I guess strategies that you can use, and I've gone over a few of them in previous videos, but this area, a lot of the enemies are vulnerable to sleep. I believe the caster as well as the dude with the spear are not. So, you know, you'll have to deal with them in other ways. They are vulnerable to fear, though. I believe both of those are, the guy with the spear as well as the caster. So, you know, that's another way to kind of deal with those 2 enemies. And then on top of that, you know, if you're trying to skill up like a sword type skill or axe craft, you know, and always a good way to go about that is to equip a kind of a crummy weapon, like, you know, one of your, maybe even your initial starting weapon, just so that you do very, very little damage. And then keep the enemy feared so that you don't ever miss, if that's an issue. Otherwise, you know, you could spam, with Adhod, you could spam Crippling Smash, you know, while everything else is slept, so he's not taking damage. You could use the Stunning Strike with Barathor. Otherwise, you know, you may want to rely on getting somebody the Fear spell so that you can keep an enemy feared. Anyways, we'll see here what else I've got. Hopefully I've got some examples of me actually skilling up, but I'm not sure what else is actually in this video. Literally, I won't be moving anywhere. I'm really just going to be hanging out in this area for the rest of this video. Hopefully the next one will most likely be, you know, fighting with Aragorn and kind of moving on with the story. This is the enemy formation once again. Caster on the left, spear guy, dual wielder dude, and then the crossbow on the far right. So you'll see once again we'll get another cracked elf stone of fire protection as a reward for this battle. I guess that's kind of why I tossed this in here, just so that you guys could see you can get multiples from this spot and it's not just a one-time deal. There you go. I got a little excited when I saw that Mire Embers down there, because it almost looks like a, you know, like a weapon. So I thought, oh, I was like, oh yeah, cool, you get a weapon for this. Well, you don't. All right, so this is a good example of skilling up here. Obviously, I've got everything that's slept. Actually, this isn't a good example of skilling up. This is a good example of Adhod being equipped with a super weak weapon. But obviously, so I've got everything slept. Nice. That was actually, what was that, War Call? Oh, yeah. So this was actually originally going to be a video of kind of showcasing Barathor's War Call and the different abilities that the different characters use. There's still some questions I have now. Specifically, I'm kind of wondering what the enemies, or sorry, what my characters will use once they're at level 99 with all of their abilities learned. That's my final question, and I don't have the answer to that because I have not leveled to 99 yet. But anyways, as of right now, Hadhod is using, what is it, Durin Wrath, which seems so stupid. Why is it? I don't know. I feel like they just made a mistake there. It should have been Durin's Wrath. But anyways, he uses Durin Wrath. Normally that would stun an enemy, which is actually pretty awesome. Aoden uses Scatter Health, and that is just broken. That ability is so good. So it basically drains health from your enemy and gives it to all of your entire party. So it's like a party heal on top of, you know, dealing damage. It's crazy. I have no idea why they made that part of War Call. Anyways, alright, let's swap in. We've got Elagast and Morwen now, so let's see what these two do. Alright, where's War Call? There it is. And I just used War Call instead of Warcry because I didn't want Barathor to take his actions. Rohirric Rampage. So that's literally her hardest hitting ability. And I don't know what level my character's at. So again, I feel like the abilities that your characters use are actually based off of their level. That might not be 100% correct. I just don't know. I don't know what the formula is or what, you know, actually determines it, because like I said at the very beginning of the game, Hadhod was using his casting spell. What was that? Flaming Fury. And then eventually he swapped, and then he was like just using his regular attack, which seems really weird. But, you know, I'm sure there's something like, okay, if he's this level or above, you use, you know, Durin's Wrath. If he doesn't have Durin's Wrath, then he uses Mountain, what is it, Mountain Hewer or whatever, his 2-strike attack, or Mountain Rage or something like that. And then, you know, but if he doesn't have that, then he'll just use his regular attack. And then everything under level 10, he always uses Flaming Fury. Again, I don't know the entire, you know, the entirety of it. I don't know the ins and outs of all the different skills, but I guess it's a general statement would be they use fairly decent abilities, and they use typically more powerful abilities as you level up. So I guess we'll leave it at that. But anyways, again, like I said earlier, this is a great place to level. You know, a lot of these guys are, you know, vulnerable to sleep. And then the ones that aren't, you can cast Fear on them. And Fear will ensure that all of your attacks land. It's always a good idea, though, if you're trying to build up melee abilities, to use Company Valor. And then typically, actually, what I like to do, too, is have most of my characters run away. And the reason why I like to do that is because, well, I should, let me back up. I do it that way now. The thing that you have to keep in mind, though, is that it's a little risky, because you're going to have, you know, less characters to kind of protect each other. But as long as you're not, you know, making mistakes with targeting and stuff like I just did there. I meant to use War Call on the caster. Anyways, Idriel is using Loudwater Fury right now, and Elagast is using True Shot, which is insane. That is by far his best ability, and one of the most powerful abilities in the entire game, if not the most powerful ability in the game. So again, he's a great one to have out if you're using War Call and Warcry. And Barathor, you know, he's gonna use different things depending on what you've actually got learned. But right now, I've got Gondor Rampage, which is his best multi-target strike, or sorry, his best multi-strike ability. Oh nope, I lied. He only has Ecthelion Wrath right now. Later on, though, when you learn Gondor Rampage, that's a 5-strike attack, and he will start to use that whenever you use War Call. He actually, I believe he will use it when you use Warcry as well, if you've only got one other character out. So basically, you know, War Call. I'm sorry, I gotta try to remember exactly which one's which. War Call gives 2 allies a free attack. If it's only Barathor and one other person, like if you made one person retreat, he will use an ability instead. Similarly, you know, if there's 3 people, or only 3 people, and you use War Cry, so they're really hard to, it's hard to keep them straight. Anyways, the one that 3 people take actions, then he will participate. If you've got an ally, usually the ally will participate in that. There is one notable exception, though. I think that's towards the end of the game, where he won't, and I'll point that out once we actually. For the most part, that leadership skill is insanely awesome. I really like those 2 abilities, War Call and War Cry. Reason being, you know, you can use some really you can use extremely powerful abilities without the kind of like the reuse time, if that, you know, again, if that term makes sense. But you know, some of these abilities have a really long, like, kind of cooldown timer. Loudwater Fury is a perfect example. That's got a really long reuse time, but when you use War Cry, that doesn't matter. It's only Barathor using his turn, and you know, essentially it's just free damage off of the other character. So again, it's a I feel like an underused ability. I think it's just actually a really great, really powerful ability, and you'll see some pretty crazy stuff that I do with it later on. But anyways, back to skilling up. I kind of want to, you know, discuss that just a wee bit more before the end of this video, because again, that's actually, I should say, this is kind of where I take care of all that, or start kind of doing all that. You know, some good combos, like number 1, for when you're skilling up, you're going to be running out of AP. So if you don't have items, that it kind of sucks, but hey, you know what, not everybody spent a ton of time, you know, crafting up Old Toby. So the way around that is to use Company Might and then Fellowship Grace. That is going to keep you with a really good amount of AP. Eventually you will have to recast Fellowship Grace, you know, to get that back on your characters. But otherwise, like what I like to do generally is, you know, I get people's buffs out, and then I actually make 2 characters retreat, and then I basically just build 1 character at a time. And the reason why I like doing that, again, it's a little more risky. I will fully admit that. You're much more vulnerable, but that way you know, it's just easier to repeat using the same skills over and over. So if you've got 3 different characters, you're typically building 3 different skill trees, right? That makes sense. So you know, your menu commands are going to be different. So it's going to be like, okay, go down to Swordcraft, and then go over to, you know, go over once and then down 3 times to get to Stunning Strike, for example. And then, you know, with Morrowind, okay, well, I'm going to build up her dual axe craft. So we're going to, you know, press down 2 or 3 times to get to dual axe craft, and then we're going to do battle haste because it's nice and cheap and it doesn't affect the enemies. So, you know, that's down twice. So anyways, it gets a little, it's easier to repeat the same actions as opposed to trying to maneuver to 3 different menus with 3 different people. And oftentimes you're going to have somebody like Morrowind that's hasted, and maybe Hadhod isn't. So, you know, Morrowind's going to get at, you know, 2 or 3 times the amount of turns that Hadhod is, and so on and so forth. So again, I typically like to have one or 2 characters run away, so then just that one final character can, you know, work on their skills. Now that is very easy to accomplish when you're not trying to level up, or when you're not leveling up something that's going to, like, kind of deal damage to the enemy and wake them up potentially. Now something like Stunning Strike is a fantastic skill to learn early if you're trying to skill up Barathor's sword skills, because he can keep an enemy completely locked down by stunning over and over and over. And you know, that the great thing about that too is a stunned enemy, you will never miss on them, much like a feared enemy. So You know, there's some things that that kind of just help build others. Perfect example of that is actually the Shadowcraft tree. The Shadowcraft tree is extremely easy to level by itself, and then since it's got the fear command in there, that fear is it helps drastically when you're trying to level up other trees, specifically the melee oriented trees. So again, I guess for most characters, if you're trying to level up a a sword oriented or a melee oriented tree, I would suggest learning the Shadowcraft tree first. At least get to fear so that you can keep the enemy feared. It's gonna help you out a ton. If you don't want to put the time in, I guess you're just gonna have to rely on Company Valor to make sure that you're not missing. Otherwise, hopefully you've got enough dexterity where it doesn't really matter anyway. Spiritcraft's skills, literally every single one of them all of them are easy to build up. Idriel has a ton of cheap abilities. Gift of Elrond, namely 15 AP. I mean, that's just easy. That's easy to learn all of her stuff. Aedan has Dispel. That is a great one. Unfortunately, it's extremely expensive, but his passive ensures that his AP stays fairly healthy. You may need to use items from time to time, but he does a fairly good job. Barathor, leadership, extremely easy to level. Spam Company Might over and over and over. And then when you need to, toss some Fellowship Grace in there to restore his AP. Again, super easy. His Swordcraft, different story. Stunning Strike is going to be the way to go, though. Hopefully you've got Fear learned so that it's a little easier to land right away. Then once you get Stunning Strike on, then you just spam it. And you'll never miss, because again, they're stunned. Hadhod, as far as Spiritcraft, you're going to want to go with Endure Flame. It's, I believe, his cheapest ability, 35 AP. With his Axecraft, his is probably literally the worst of everybody's to try to skill up. You're either going to need to do Durin's Wrath, which is extremely expensive, or I would suggest actually instead Crippling Smash, and in combo with Fear, just because again you're going to land Crippling Smash more often. If his Dex is okay, then don't bother with Fear. Just keep using Crippling. Idriel, once again, okay, so Spirit Powers, it's Gift of Elrond, easy. And then with her Swordcraft, her Leech Inspiration is awesome because it doesn't deal any damage. Otherwise, you can do Stunning Strike for, once again, it keeps the enemy stunned, it keeps it easy for them to land, or for her to land her abilities on. Aedan, like I said earlier, excuse me, sorry. His Spirit Powers fairly easy to learn with Dispel. His Spear Powers, unfortunately, once again, a more difficult one. And he doesn't have anything cool. He doesn't have a strike. He doesn't have a cripple. So you're going to have to go with some sort of fear, to keep an enemy kind of locked down. And then you can just use, I think it's Horseword Skewer over and over. Again, it stinks, but that's kind of just the way he is. His is just really difficult to learn. Morwen, super easy. Her Thiefcraft is probably the best to start with. Learning or using C's skill. Once you've learned Cloak of the Plains, then you can go right into Dual Axecraft and just spamming Battle Haste. Very easy. She's probably the easiest of all the characters to learn all of her skills for. Okay, so Morwen, I think. Okay, Elagast. Obviously for a Bowcraft, super easy. Crippling Shot, over and over, spam it. His Rangercraft, equally as easy, spamming Arrows of Sleep. I believe that's all of the characters, and those are probably the easiest ways to learn those skills. Now, item crafting, I don't know, that's a tough one. Most of those items just aren't going to be useful. But I will fully admit that Morwen is probably the most ideal person to learn all that stuff on because she's got passives that are geared towards crafting items. Now, that being said, I didn't learn it on her. Not that it really matters. I just learned them all on, I just happened to learn them all on Barathor. Anyway, so that tree, fairly easy to learn all the abilities. Once you get to Old Toby, spam Old Toby. That item is awesome, especially if you've got characters that are, you know, specializing in spirit craft, or that have put points into spirit. That's going to drastically increase the effectiveness of that item, as well as, you know, if you're keeping company might on your characters, that also increases the effectiveness of your items. Lightcraft, extremely easy to level up. Keep enemies slept, and Gift of Galadriel yourself until the cows come home. So again, that one is really easy. Shadowcraft, also equally as easy, if not easier. Spam to spell on the enemies until you learn Whip of the Master, and then spam Whip of the Master on yourself. It's an extremely cheap 30 AP ability, and again, really great way to finish out that Shadowcraft tree. I believe that takes care of all of the abilities for the different characters. You know, I guess the bottom line here is when you're trying to skill up, the best timing and the best way to do it is if you can keep enemies slept or you know, kind of crippled in some way. So that they're not able to fight back. Fear is great for that. Suffocate Evil is pretty good too, except the problem with Suffocate Evil is it's going to do damage over time though as well. The Sleep from the Lightcraft tree is okay, but it's not going to be as good as Sleep Arrows because there is no passive to back it up to keep enemies sleeping. You know, Lingering Sleep is, I guess, the passive that I'm referring to with Elagast. But that being said, you know, if it comes right down to it, I guess you could use it. But anyways, that's going to be pretty much it. So the next video we will be continuing on in Helm's Deep. I believe my characters will have learned most of their abilities, so you'll see again a little bit different play from here on out. I hope it's interesting. Anyways, I hope these guys are helpful though. Hope you're enjoying them, and I guess keep joining me for more. Alright, thanks for watching.